Welcome back to the Smugglers Den. This is episode 34. I'm your host, Tiny Grimes. As always, I'd like to thank swdestiny.com for hosting the Smugglers Den. Go there for all your Destiny needs. You can go to brokenegggames.com. Make your purchases. You were going to buy the stuff already. You might as well put TG Games at the discount code coupon. Help out the show a little bit. And pop over to Patreon, Tiny Grimes. We're doing all kinds of discussions. Any support that you give me is so much appreciated. I can barely put it into words. I put out a tier list. It was obliterated 2 hours later, so that means a new one is on the horizon really soon. And I'd like to bring in this week James Stevenson from Insomniac Games. He's a guy from Los Angeles that I've never seen. I don't think he really exists, but he's here to claim that he does. Welcome to the show, James.
Thank you very much, and yes, I am just an elaborate troll on you. But that's how big our meta is here. It's gigantic and so deep.
I can't tell if I'm ducking you or you're ducking me or what's going on.
Well, I was going to go out to Fire and Dice on Wednesday. I heard you weren't going. I'm like, never mind.
But then I went.
Oh, then you went. See, exactly. If I had known you were going.
Yeah, it was a last-second thing. I had jury duty that day, and I fully expected to be busy all day. And then at noon, they were just like, you know what? Screw it, you're done. I was like, oh my goodness, this is the best jury duty ever.
That is the best when it happens that way.
Yeah, so rare too, right?
But wait, now you won a store championship this last weekend, right?
What? Yeah, I did, but we'll get into that in a couple of minutes. First, I want to ask you. I like to ask new guests, typical questions like, hey, James. So, you're known as a big video game guy. Do you also play a lot of card games?
So I started way back in the day with the Star Wars CCG by Decipher,
nice.
And man, I love that game. I was just, a teenager and, saving all my money. And that was back like when, wholesalers would sell you boxes, sort of. It was like the weird Wild West. And I figured that out. And then I bought a lot of cards and I played every week. And I was decent, like, as good as someone could be who, played against himself most of the time, little homeschool kid back in the day. But I loved that game and I always loved playing Star Wars card games. And I kind of dropped off for a little while. I played some X-Wing. I played some Hearthstone. And was really into that. And honestly, when Destiny was first announced, I was kind of like, nah, I don't know, Fantasy Flight. I've given you a lot of money for X-Wing. And I was a little like, it was like those dice. There's like the dice were so big and primary color. And I was just kind of like looking at it like, I don't know. And then a bunch of people started talking about it on NeoGAF, which is a video game forum that I'm a part of. And we have a tiny little Destiny community there. But some people were talking about how good it was and you got to try it. I was like, okay. And so I hunted down these starters that I couldn't find anywhere. They're impossible to find cards. But I hunted down some starters and I was buying like boosters from Amazon and boxes wherever I could get them. Canada, anywhere I could like scrape a box together of Awakenings. And I got so into this game. And there's another guy I work with who plays, and so I have someone to play with at lunch, so I get games in that way and get games on TTS. And it's just like, it caught that spark of playing Star Wars cards. And it's so thematic, but it's also I love actually the pace of the game, especially. Like, I think my attention span has gotten a little bit shorter as I've gotten older, and so it's like that. Like a 30-minute game is just perfect. Like 35 minutes, and then on to a new game, and it's just like that keeps me really, really into it. So I really just fell in love with the game as soon as I played it the first time, and I've been, I bought tons of boxes, and I'm on Discord all the time, and reading forums and Reddit, and it's my favorite thing.
That's cool. It's funny because I hate to admit that very point you just made about the attention span. I used to play Game of Thrones, and games are a flat hour, and you got to be dialed in the whole hour. Boy, like the thought of playing an hour-long card game now is just like, what? Why would I do that? That sounds insane now.
Yeah, I can appreciate the people that can do it, and I remember doing that playing the Star Wars CCG, but like you'd be wiped after 6 of those games or 8 of those games in a long tournament. It was just like devastating. And so like this game, where a game might be 20 minutes and then you get a 10 or 15-minute break and then you get to play a whole new deck and a whole new opponent, it's just refreshing. I love playing tournaments. I love playing on TTS because you see so many variations and you see so many different decks and opponents, and it's just like there's always something new. So it's kind of like this perfect game for my ADD-ness that I have now in my 30s. I don't know what happened, but that's where I am in life.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. And you said 20 minutes. Well, in the Poe Maz meta, they were like 6-minute games. It was great.
I think in my first store championship this year, my very first game, the guy never mitigated a Poe die, and I think I ran I think I ran 6 Poe specials in the first 3 turns and won the game on the 6th one. But
Nice.
literally, I think the game was 5.5 minutes long.
Yeah.
It was just like bam, 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 game over.
Yeah, I remember back in Awakenings, I used to play a Jabba Dooku mill deck that I really liked. It was heavy control. It took the full 35 minutes, and I'll never forget the first tournament was when I realized I couldn't run that deck, because in a cut, like you can't actually win the mirror. You run out of time. But a guy played a Jango Veers deck, and the other guy was Luke Ray, and their whole best of 3 was over in like 16 minutes. Ours took the whole 90. They're just sitting there like, would you guys freaking finish so we can just split first?
Can you imagine? Like, that's the worst. Yeah, sitting there waiting for that. I played like towards the end of Awakenings, I was playing Phasma, and I was playing like an intentionally slow Phasma deck that used stuff like Underworld connections. And so it was basically like, I'm never going to claim. I'm just going to sit back and do everything as slow as possible. And so you know, Jimmy, and we had a game in a tournament, and he was playing Poe Ray, and I think I got endless ranks off on him twice. And this game, we literally went to time too. Like, he couldn't kill me with Poe Ray because I just sat there. And it was this slow back and forth game that just took forever. You don't see that happen anymore in the Spirit of Rebellion meta.
Yeah, I can't tell if this is a design choice or just sort of where the game is at. I'm very curious to see moving forward down the line if we get more of these like hardcore control decks that can really stall a game out, or if the designers are just like, listen, man, just roll your dice, take your damage, and do it faster than the other guy. That is called Star Wars Destiny.
You know, Lucas talks a lot about how he likes the pace of the game being around like that 4-turn, 5-turn mark. It feels pretty good to him. So I think he wants that like 15, 20-minute play time. It might, you know, I think you have those control decks. They're starting to crop up a little bit more as people are finding ways to prolong their decks. You see, you know, Unkar doing that. I don't know if you saw Zach Bunn's Vader guard deck, but he, again, with his only 8 upgrades, but it's like he just runs a ton of control, and he's going to last a lot longer than some other decks because he's just going to keep mitigating you. And so I think as you see some people kind of experimenting and getting away from these hyper aggro decks, you might start to see some of those high-level games start to inch up there in time again.
Yeah, I'm going to have to guess Zach didn't play against a lot of 9s decks, because it seems like 9s would just destroy that deck.
You know, Nines is the big bad now, isn't he? All of a sudden, like one errata to fast hands, and suddenly Nines is just the deck everyone's starting to key in on.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, before the errata, it already was, and I knew when that errata hit, if they didn't touch 9s and make him a limit once per turn, that he was just gonna move right into that slot real nicely.
Yeah, I think like his ability, you never really know, not knowing especially how many weapons your opponent might have. It's just this gigantic threat that is always there, that suddenly they could just go on this run. And yeah, they got to roll well, but you know, if they hit those rolls, that could be 8-9 damage out of nowhere, and suddenly you have a dead character.
Yeah, and then if you're playing against a blue version and they Boundless Ambition you, it can be a lot more than that.
Yep, that's the joy of having the rainbow color when you're in your fun card deck, right?
You're always threatening the Boundless. You don't have to have a Boundless, but you're just kind of like, you know, you do little fakes, like you got 2 cards in your hand and you go to play it, and you're like, no, not yet. Never mind, not yet. And they're like, oh, that's a Boundless, and you're like, dang, it is, and it's not at all a Boundless. It's all a Deke. It's all a Deke.
You playing mind games? No way.
What? Me? Dude, you must be thinking of someone else.
John Bruno, I guess. But
yeah, it must be John. So let me ask you this: how have you been doing in the game? I feel like you've had quite a bit of success in the Spirit of Rebellion metagame. Let me qualify that at tournaments I wasn't at, but you know, that's all right. It's all right.
Well, you know, like I said, it's one of those things where, Tiny, you want to talk good things about the players in your meta to show how deep your meta is.
Yeah, sorry, you're amazing in every way.
It's fine. It's fine. No, you know, yeah, I went up to one of the very first store championship in SoCal was out in Bakersfield, and a bunch of us, you know, Mike from SW Destiny, some of the other guys from the LA local meta, we all went up there, and I did really well there. I was first after Swiss. I was playing Pomaz just because it was like very early in the format, and it kind of keyed in on that right away. And I lost the mirror in the top 4, which was just a game where my opponent, drew his hit and runs and his thermal detonators. So tip your hat, move on. Like that's how the mirror goes, right? It's
Yeah.
just like, well,
I don't do the tipping the hat. I do more of like the sulking out of the room. That's more my thing.
It was just one of those things. Like they win the battlefield roll, they play hit and run and thermal detonator, and you're just kind of like, well,
cool.
Okay, this isn't gonna go my way. Yep. Great, thank you. I'm gonna drive back to LA now for 2 hours and sit in my car angrily.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that was that. And then the second store championship I went to was out in Montclair, and I think that was when you won your first. There was 2 that day, so it sort of split the meta.
Yeah.
And we got the San Diego guys all kind of came up to Montclair because it's sort of an easy drive for them. So we had a bunch of their really good players. But I played Palpatine that week, sort of thinking that would be a really good Pomaz counter.
Yeah.
And I beat 4 Pomazes that day.
There you go.
And none of them were close. None were close. So that was sort of that idea of, Palpatine can just shell and save his resources for Rise Again and just whittle away Pomaz. They can't do enough damage fast enough, and there's nothing they can do. If you're consistently doing 6 or 8 damage a turn, you'll whittle them down eventually, even if they get stuff like dug in off. And so it wasn't too hard, but it was kind of fun that when you sit down for the 3rd straight Pomaz game in a row, it's like, okay, like there's no way I'm going to pull this off again, right? Like, but it worked out okay. So I finished. I actually made it to the final there, but the store, like, I like that store. Like the people running it are nice, but they ran the whole tournament by hand. So like everything was in Excel, and so I went to that one particularly because I had a hard out, and I was like, that's one started an hour and a half earlier than the Burbank one. I figured it'd be done faster, and they run the whole damn thing by hand, and like they had to do extended strength of schedule tiebreaker by hand. Which took like 20 extra minutes, and we got down to it. It's like I have to leave, and so I conceded the final, which was kind of a bummer. Because the worst part was they weren't done yet. The other semi wasn't done, but it was going to be Palp versus Palp in the final, and it was like this game will take 5 minutes. Like it'll be so fast, but it was just I had to go. So that was as close as I've gotten. And we'll see if I can make another one. I was supposed to go to the one you just went to this past weekend. I had a ticket, but it was my girlfriend's dad's 60th birthday party.
So that's weak. That is a weak excuse right there.
I flew to Connecticut. I was in Connecticut for less than 35 hours. Yeah. And I should have said hi to the Hyperloops guys because I think they're out in that ballpark.
Dude, you just Skype in on that one, man. You don't have to be there.
If I wonder if I got one of those little like you ever seen those iPads on wheels that people use for telephone?
Oh, I have, yeah.
Could I roll those to could someone take one to a store for me and just like play my cards for me? Could I pay someone?
No, you got to send that to Connecticut. What the hell's wrong with you?
Oh, got it. I'm supposed to actually be playing in person.
You just put it on your girlfriend's shoulder, your wife's shoulder, and then she's like the 2-headed monster.
Oh, that's fun. And do you think anyone would mind if I was doing it during a tournament, sort of like playing? Okay, great.
Yeah, no, it's
cool.
Fine. No one
I'm distracted. Everyone's
not annoying at all.
But so how was this? This is you were at the Perky Nerd, which is a new store. Really nice on the inside. I've been there I played there a couple times just casually. And they had their first store champ. It was really their first tournament, I think, major tournament of any kind.
They seemed pretty new to the scene. But it went really smoothly. The owner of the store didn't really know anything about Destiny, so she was basically letting someone else run the tournament for the store, which was great. The person knew what they were doing. It was smooth sailing. We had a little interesting thing at the beginning where we had 34 people, and if you get into the mid-30s, things get real dicey as far as how many 4-and-1s make the cut and how many don't make the cut. And all the ones that don't make the cut are really mad about it. And so
it's all strength of schedule outside of your control at that point.
Yeah, it usually comes down to who'd you play turn 1, and then did they drop soon after at like 0-2 drop, and then you're just screwed. And so I went up to the owner beforehand, and not the owner, the person running the tournament, said, hey, and I told him about this concern. And I said, would you mind doing 6 rounds? And the guy was like, yeah, you know what? That's a great idea. We should do that. But it's not in the rules, so I feel like since I didn't advertise that and it's not in the rules, I need to ask. And a couple people were like, no, man, 30 extra minutes. No, I think kind of like you. Like, I have a pretty hard out. I came here with this window, and now I can't do an extra round, and so they didn't do it, and I was not happy about that, right? It's kind of frustrating. It's like people are always like, well, just, I don't know why people complain about the 5 rounds. You can do whatever you want. It's like, not really, right? Like, it gets real hard to get stores to actually do an extra round.
Yeah, and what's the number? Is it like 38 or 39, I think?
41.
Where it goes? Oh, well, I mean, that store was like, I guess they did cap it at 40, so it was kind of guaranteed, but like they were one person away from needing that extra round.
Yeah.
I'm surprised people objected to that for, because 30 extra minutes is probably not a big deal in the swing of things.
I was surprised. I was a little surprised. And then there were a whole bunch of different people who had different reasons. Like, one guy is a guy that we know, and he was like, well, what if I'm 4-1 and then I lose that next round? Then I'll feel really bad. And I was like, really? What would you feel worse about? Actually losing and not making the cut, or getting screwed? And he's like, oh, that's a good point, actually. I think I would be madder if I got screwed.
You're like, I hope at the end of this, after objecting, you are 4-1 and on the outside looking in, wishing you had a chance to play your way into the final. Because what if you're 4-1 in 6th place?
Right.
And you get the opportunity to win another game and make the Final Four.
Yep. The guy running the show was really cool. He came up to me. He's like, I hope you understand. I said, totally get it, man. No hard feelings at all. I said, but I do hope that all of the people who objected are 4-1 and don't make the cut. And he gave me this look like, what kind of horrible person are you?
That's just hoping they get a taste of their own medicine.
Exactly. It doesn't make me a bad person. It makes me reasonable.
So did any of those people make the cut?
I don't actually know. It was a really weird field. It was so SoCal has, like you said, this incredibly deep meta. Like, I feel like if we all go to an event, there's like 12 people that could legit win that event, and a couple more that could just pop up and win it, and you'd be like, dang, I didn't see that coming. But this event didn't have many of sort of the typical people. It was me and Jimmy, and then several people that I didn't know who like played at different stores, and a couple other people I didn't know who were like from different areas. I only knew like 4 people total at the whole event of 34. It was a little bit strange.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, you guys have, when you play a certain store on a certain night of the week, there's so many people across LA that maybe play a different night of the week, or that's a night, they have a class or something. And so, like, you may not ever meet those people until you run into them when your weekends line up. Yeah. There's a lot of people out here that play the game, and it's really crazy because it seems like every time I go somewhere, there's, like, someone I've never seen before, and then there's someone who surprises me, like, who's that person in the top 8 right now? Like, where do they come from?
It was fun. The whole top 4 was like that. It was me, Jimmy, then 2 guys I didn't know. I had played them both earlier in Swiss, because check this out, man. 5 rounds of Swiss, I beat 4 4-1s as the only undefeated in Swiss, and then the other person I beat was a Poe Maz player.
Oh, dude, that's a murderer's row that you went through. They should have just crowned you, not even dealt with it.
That's what I was thinking. But you know what I did? I went on to beat the 2 4-1s in the Final Four to go 7-0, beating 6 4-1s in the day and a Poe Maz player. So I was pretty happy.
Yeah, and you were playing Unkar, right?
No, I was playing the Rainbow Nines, which is the Bala Night Sister Nines, which I don't think is as strong, but it's like, they're kind of weird. Like, Unkar has all these awesome plays and skill plays you get to make, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. You have 2 salvage stands and Imperial Inspection, and you roll Unkar, like you roll a holdout blaster on 9s, then roll Unkar, no resources, no disrupt, and then the world explodes because you missed all of your awesome plays. The Rainbow 9s deck doesn't have to worry about that. It's just like, here's damage to your face, you're dead now, thank you. Okay, that was fun.
And if you don't have it, the Night Sister just re-rolls it for you.
Yeah, and so the hilarious thing is I played someone... Actually, so I played this at the store champ and a tournament that I went 4-0 in the week before. And against Mike, he was playing a mill deck. Oh, no. I played 2 mill decks that night. Mill decks against Night Sister is hilarious. You're just like, I'll ping the Night Sister again. Really for no reason this time. I just feel like it. And they're like, you son of a bitch, quit pinging her.
Like, you're never going to kill her. I guess, like, you could almost take shields in that matchup on the Night Sister as free rerolls. Yeah.
I've done that. I pinged the Night Sister 8 times in that game because I did get the opening shields on her. She did not die, and I pinged her 8 times. It was awesome.
That is like some massive, massive value in that matchup. It's too bad One Punch Vader is gone now because I felt like that was a mill deck that we were actually going to start seeing.
Yes.
And I played, I don't, Chris from San Diego, who I think you played in the final of a store championship recently.
I don't know that guy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. Well, you don't know him, but he was playing that, and I was playing, but it was like, that was right before that deck, went away. And I was like, man, this deck, like, it's kind of scary. Like, it actually, it won't always get up and running, but when it does, it's really, really nasty. And I was kind of like, it'll be fun if there's a mill archetype running around.
Yeah.
But rest in peace, One Punch Vader. Sorry, Smurley.
I think mill is the perfect answer to 9s, but I don't think there's a good mill deck. That's kind of the problem right now.
I think you're right. I think a deck that has discard easily available to it, could actually do something, which we'll talk about later. But that's why I like Jin right now. I actually think Jin maybe is a very interesting card in a 9s meta.
So you can't see my face, but my face is like, what the heck are you talking about, Jin? Have you lost your mind? This connection's going bad. I'm gonna hang up now. We'll get there in a couple minutes. We're gonna talk about decks that we're trying. So to finish up the store champ thing, close that out. I've now won 2 store champs and got a second. So I feel like it's a pretty good season. You know me, like I remember the second way more than the first. Like that just makes me angry. Every time I just call him the guy from San Diego that luck sacked me. Every time I think about him, I'm angry. And people are like, you got 2 firsts, man. Chill. You have a pile of phasmas. I'm like, it's not about that.
Well, San Diego, like their meta is terrible, but they can god roll once in a while.
I like where your head's at, sir.
I'll say that's the other part about the meta. Like even the LA meta is great, but man, those San Diego guys, like they come up in force too. They've come up to a bunch of our store championships, and they have a handful of players that are maybe above average.
Yeah, slightly. Now, to be serious, though, I was pretty good friends with Nick, who was the anchor of that meta and won, like, every single San Diego event. And then he quit the game, and I thought the San Diego meta was just going to wither and die. A couple people sold their collections. And I'm really happy to see that it hasn't. It's really good that SoCal continues to be huge, even when crucial members drop out. It's just the game's a good enough game that people are like, well, we're going to miss you, best player in the meta, but guess what? Now I get to be the best player in the meta.
We all, and the best part's going to be when all us LA guys crush them at regionals.
Yes. I mean, there's no Pomaz to lean on. They all their wins are with Pomaz. The crutch.
That is true, right? I think Jim, when he won Fire and Dice, that was Pomaz. So I think at least all the ones up here that I've heard of.
I'm just gonna say this. I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm pretty sure before that guy won with Pomaz, he went 0-2 drop with Pomaz. I'm just saying. I might be wrong, actually. I'm gonna put it out there anyway to stir the rivalry.
I will say, like, I beat him twice. I beat him twice in Montclair, once in the Final Four, once in the Swiss. So I'm 2-0 against him. But when he sat down like Jim Lafferty, I'm like, I know that name, and that guy, like, I remember he was number 1 in the world in Star Wars CCG back in the day.
That's pretty good.
So like maybe I don't know how good he is at Destiny, but at least back in the day when I was a kid, I remember Jim Lafferty, that name, and pretty good card player. So like there's some. It's kind of fun to see some of those old names you remember from previous games, even decades ago. Now coming back and playing Destiny.
And by the way, just to be clear, the San Diego guys are really nice guys. It's just a running joke that we have. In case you're not on the ins here, we do not hate the San Diego players. We don't. Well, we kind of do.
Yeah, kind of.
All right, well, let's move on from this talk and talk about a couple of decks that we're trying to crack. So we got the new FAQ. I feel like there's a moment here where the meta's, quote, wide open. It's not really, but we can pretend like it is, and I'm trying to find some answers. So my impression is 9s is awesome. And so, like I just said, what I've tried to do is think, well, what beats 9s? Well, you know what beats 9s? If he doesn't have weapons in his hand.
Yep.
And so I tried a Vader Jabba mill deck with personal shields and hunker downs, and it actually worked really well against nines. Here's a crazy story, man. On Wednesday we had our tournament. I played Mike in the first round. He was playing Rainbow Nines. He milled me. Dude milled me with a Boundless Ambition Rainbow Nines deck.
How, just was it Vibro Knucklers, or how does he mill you?
This is how he milled me. I rolled one discard side the whole game with a turn 1 Vibro Knuckles and a Jabba that never died. So you know how I milled him? With Vader. Vader's ability milled him, and then he re-rolled to mill himself and overwrote some weapons, never boundless, because that's crazy. And at the end of the game, he had like 2 cards in hand, and the last turn, he played a Vibro Knuckles on nines, rolls out the 2 discard sides, so I had to bounce it back to his hand. He replays it, he rolls it out again, pays the 1. It was complete madness. He milled like the last 5 cards out of my hand with 1 Vibro Knucklers in the last turn. I was really mad, actually. Like, I was downright angry after that game.
So you ended up losing from the mill.
Yes, I lost to mill against a Boundless Ambition Rainbow Nines deck.
That's absolutely insane.
Yes.
I mean, it's weird. Like, do you remember, like, if you ever played Han Ray, that deck was always kind of in danger of milling itself. And I feel like Nines has a little bit of that in him.
Nines has a lot of that in him.
Yeah, right. I mean, re-rolling and replaying and just overwriting weapon after weapon. If you can survive against him, it actually starts to become like an alternate condition where if you have a little bit of discarding in your deck, like with Vader, you might be able to run him out of cards.
Yeah, you would think with Jabba, like, and not just Jabba, like, Jabba rolls his dice out, Jabba re-rolls one of the dice, still not hitting mill sides.
You should get rid of those 2 dice, probably.
I think I'm going to. I think I'm going to have to saline test them, and I think they're busted in a bad way. So.
You're like, not another disrupt. Jesus Christ, Jabba, come on.
Yeah, no, he kept rolling that, right? And Mike's like, well... I went. Oh, so the main way Mike milled me also was I had the mill battlefield, but because I kept re-rolling to try to get my dang discard sides, he just started passing on damage and just immediately claiming. And I wasn't that worried because I was like, okay, so he's gonna get me down to 5. He can't actually beat me unless he were to get insane. Oh, he did get insane with the Vibro Knucklers. Okay, cool.
Man, talk about backfire. So is that like, so you get milled out, so that's the first game.
That's the first game.
How else did the deck do?
It went really well. I beat a Palpatine without too much trouble. Just personal shields hunkered down, and Palpatine's like, dude, I'm doing a lot of damage, why is it all going nowhere? And then I ended up getting a Rise Again, and that really crushed his spirits. Then I played...
What did you put on with the Rise Again? I'm curious.
I don't know, something lame. Like Vibro Knucklers or something. It's just the damage, man. It's just getting rid of the damage.
Well, there's always that good swing when you like have a great upgrade out of it.
Yeah,
so,
no,
but
I didn't.
To be fair, I won a game. One of those Pomaz games I won with Palp was I rose again into a Force Illusion. So
that can help. That can help.
It did. It did. Kept him alive.
Yep. And then I beat another deck. It didn't. I don't remember what it was. But then the last game, so I'm 2-1. I've got a chance to, win a Finn, right? I know he's unplayable garbage, but he still looks kind of cool. And I took the shields last time, so I was like, okay, I want my Finn. And I played Jimmy. He was playing Emo Kids. He got a Vibro Knife like turn 1 and just rolled sick damage. And I was like, all these personal shields and Force Illusions, they don't do that much against a turn 1 Vibro Knife. They really don't. Like,
no, especially with all the melee side. It's interesting. Like, I feel like the errata definitely has helped shields. Like, they feel better because, Vader Raider is one of those key decks you're really afraid of with shields, but there's still just a couple of those lurking decks where a Vibro Knife can really, really wreck your day if you're playing a lot of shield emphasis.
Yeah, and the shields were amazing. Personal shield against range decks is insane. You prevent so much damage with that.
Well, between its ability and just its sides, like
Yeah, it was like 3 shields a turn.
I mean, think how much mitigation. It's a free dug in every single turn.
Yeah, and when you're playing Palp, that's almost all that damage. So
it's basically you play that card and it mitigates Palp's entire ability for the rest of the game.
Yeah, pretty much. So the deck felt actually really good, but the problem is it really suffers from when Jabba dies. How do you mill them? Like, you mill them by them not paying for blackmail. You mill them by rolling the discard side on the Vibro Knucklers and hoping against hope that they don't just mitigate that. And then you pretty much just die.
So basically, if Jabba's dead and you don't have like blackmail and 2 Vibro Knucklers, you're pretty much toast.
And blackmail really doesn't do anything. They just pay one. So
it's
basically just a way to make... It's basically a choke at that point. It takes $1 and gives you $1. And so if you can't really do much with that, it's kind of pointless.
Yeah, apparently Darth Vader is just willing to be paid off instead of putting the salacious news in the paper.
Exactly. He's become more of like one of Jabba's workers than Jabba's boss.
Like that One Punch Vader deck, man. That just fast hands made that so interesting, and now it's just like, that whole Vader mill archetype is just kind of in the tank.
There's a couple other interesting villain mill archetypes, I think, but they all seem to be like they just die to burst, right? If you burst down Unkar, then the game ends, and they're like, okay, cool, that was fun.
Yep. I think, so the card I've been really interested in since the errata, and even a little bit before, to be downright honest, is, and this is kind of because of 9s in some ways, but Cargo Hold, I think, is the card that really, really has this amazing, I think a high skill, I think a really high skill cap, and I think just also, like, you know, you kind of love some of those really thoughtful, weird Destiny play where you're like, there's so many different ways you could play this and ways your opponent can play it. And when you're thinking of all these different claim possibilities back and forth with someone, like Cargo Hold just opens a gazillion possibilities in every game, and I love it. It's so much fun playing it, but I love it because I think it's a really good 9s counter, and we're going to be seeing a lot of him.
Yeah.
So I've been playing. It was a deck that I first saw Architect Gaming put up, and he saw it from someone else on TTS. But it's Emaz and Snap and Ray, and so it's a super fragile deck. You've got 2 dice on Maz, just Snap, 1 die on Snap, 1 die on Ray. But it plays, you know, the whole rainbow, all the best mitigation cards, lots of shield cards, heroism, caution, field medic. And it really relies on getting, like, you know, getting ahead on resources, whether you cheat with Ray, disrupt them, and then disrupt their resources, or fair trade. Fair trade is a card that I think everyone should be playing more of.
Yeah.
And then when you win those first couple turns, really, it doesn't feel good. Like, you're sitting there and all you've really done is like disrupt their resources and play a single upgrade and maybe a 4-speed and kind of try and keep yourself alive, and you maybe did a damage and you're like, how am I going to win this game? I do like 2 or 3 damage in the first couple turns, but then you get a bowcaster, or you get a DL-44, or you get a one with the force out, and suddenly you start doing like a consistent 4 damage a turn, and you get planetary. And the way the deck works between using Maz's cheat and Ray's cheating, you can essentially a lot of times roll and resolve most of the dice you want to resolve before your opponent does anything, and a lot of times that will deny them of their resources, do some damage, and then you're in a position to claim. And with Cargo Hold, you can move their cards and use it as additional mitigation now. So it really, really has, I think, kind of a fun skill level, but it also feels pretty fragile at times. And you said you had tried it out when we were talking a little bit before.
Yeah, I tried it out. I love the idea of it, and when you get your battlefield, whatever that is, whether that's Frozen Waste or Cargo Hold, whatever control battlefield you get, I think it functions a lot better. So I'm going to talk 2 sides of the coin. I played it in 2 games. The first game, I got my battlefield, and then I went Vibro Knife, roll in Snap, roll Maz, turn Snap's die to the disrupt, take his 2 resources, and this is against a 9s deck. And so then the guy's just like, wait, what happened? And he really just didn't play an upgrade for 2 turns, and at that point, I'm starting to get set up, like you said, the DL-44, a bowcaster, goggles, all this stuff. I'm just doing like 8 damage before he even goes, and then I'm mitigating, and it was an absolute bloodbath. But it took forever. It took like 38 minutes to complete this bloodbath. But then the second game was the complete reverse. We got his battlefield. I wasn't able to get the sick cheats before he could go. He got even just that one weapon turn 1, and then was able to overwrite it, and then just blew the doors off of it. It was like, overwrite on 9s, overwrite on 9s. I can't mitigate any of it. Boundless, get a whole new hand, overwrite on 9s, and it just felt like when things don't go right, the deck it's too anemic. It takes so long to get set up that it gets bursted down before it gets going. But like you said, if it can get going and start choking and grinding, it's a very satisfying slow deck. But have you had any of those games, or have you played against a lot of 9s where they just do that to you?
I've had both, where I've lost my battlefield for sure, and it's definitely the scariest thing when you lose your battlefield is if they pay those resources right away, and they get an upgrade out, now you're suddenly behind, and you really need that burst of speed where you can force speed, hold out blaster, roll ray, roll Maz, hit the force speed special, roll snap, resolve some stuff, and then basically be an action or two from claiming and getting that weapon off of 9s as quick as possible. Yeah. So you have to be playing with that mindset of, I can't let 9s have those resources sitting on him, and I have to get out of this as fast as I can. Right. Fair trade's another really good one. Like once I'm in front, once I've claimed and I'm in front of it, now I can do a lot of nasty stuff, because if I can play that vibro knife or that holdout blaster and roll, and sometimes I won't even roll Rain at that point. I'll just straight roll Maz looking for a focus so that I can focus to a resource and immediately fair trade. And now I've got 2 resources again. They've got 1. The game's totally flipped, because then I can play a planetary uprising and I can do all sorts of nasty stuff. So the other thing is you got to protect Maz, because Maz is like the linchpin, and she only has 8 health. So if you lose your battlefield, she starts at 10, which helps, because you have a lot of mitigation, you got a lot of shields. You can you can dig for second chance. And second chance, I've had so many games where I've literally gone through 2 second chance. You get so many resources you play too. Yeah. The other key card I love is hyperspace jump. The deck has the money to pay for it, and you're out so far ahead that a lot of times you can fair trade and then hyperspace jump them, and it's just like you basically just do a bunch of stuff, do 4 or 5 damage, and then hyperspace jump and do it all over again on the next turn, and it's really, really powerful in that deck. Yeah. Maybe the most powerful kind of hyperspace jump deck I've seen since the actual Hyperloop deck. So I think it's a really impactful card in that deck, and I think there'll be different flavors of it, and I think it will struggle. It'll struggle if a Poe Maz gets thermal detonators off. Almost nothing you can do as a 3-character deck. Yeah. But I'll tell you another deck I lost to, and it was a bad game, but I played a IG-88 FN deck, and I had it mostly under control, and then couldn't find a defensive position to save my life. Like, they're both at the bottom of my deck, and IG-88, he was like rolling double threes every single roll. It's just like, it was like, well, these electroshocks are worthless, and whatever. So, but I think it's a deck that has a lot of potential, and we saw one of them sneak into the top 16 at X Wars. So
it won the store championship at X Wars the next day.
Right. It's really it's one of those decks that's so high skill level, because there's so many different cards, so many ways you can play any given turn. And do you activate Snap and go for the Disrupt? Do you activate Ray and go for the Force Speed? Do you try and fair trade? Are you going to hyperspace jump? What upgrades are you going to play? What are you looking for? That I think, and then the cargo hold itself. Just am I moving my upgrades to try and move a second chance to Ray if they target her? There's so many ways to play it, and so many different avenues that it's really, really. I think I don't think we've seen the last of it, and I think players who put some time in with it will find, even if it's maybe not a tier 1 deck in the end, it's still a lot of fun to play.
Yeah, I wonder how much of its success was the fact that people had no idea what was going on. Like, I think when you first see this deck, you're like, all right, that's a mill deck. That's definitely a mill deck.
Yep.
And then it's not a mill deck, and you actually don't know who you're supposed to kill, right? And you're like, well, Snap is scary. He's really making it tough to claim, and you're like, yeah, kill Snap. Kill snap for sure. Let me get a second chance on Maz before you even look at her.
Yep.
And I think it won a lot of decks by that. But I will agree. I mean, it's a good grindy deck. I just really feel like it has a real weakness to losing its battlefield against 9s and 9s getting set up turn 1. It just doesn't seem to have recourse against that. Like if it had confiscation or a way to disarm, some way to remove that initial weapon that's allowing them to overwrite for the whole rest of the game, that to me was the weakness. Is once it had the one moment let up early, the game was just over, and that to me is rough.
Yeah, it's hard for it to come back, I think, if it if 9s gets going, and especially like you said with Boundless, 9s can essentially do burst damage equal to one of its characters at a point where it no longer can respond. So that becomes really tough. Now, Cargo Hold, like I talked about that being, but I think you were also playing it, but in a different deck.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Cargo Hold is, I don't know if it's the answer to 9s, to be honest, because I was playing against a 9s deck with my Cargo Hold, and it's like, okay, all right, so he's got a redeploy weapon out. I'm going to Cargo Hold, and I'm going to move it. What? Wait, what? Who am I moving this to? Like, yeah, it deprives 9s a little bit, but then, like, it's going to go to Bala? Like, I'm not going to give it to Bala? What are you, crazy? So then what? I'm going to give it to, say, the Night Sister, who's already almost dead. Now I can't really kill the Night Sister ever, because then if I do, I don't have a target to send that weapon to, because I can't just give them a free loaded up Bala. And it just, like, theoretically, Cargo Hold seems amazing, and then in practice, a little less so. I think it's great in the deck types you are talking about. If you can combo Choke with Cargo Hold and make it so once 9s loses a weapon, he's kind of screwed the rest of the game, I think it's awesome. I tried it in an Obi-Wan Rey deck, and it was a little bit less impactful than I thought against 9s. In another game, though, or several other games, I used it to move my stuff around, which was really strong. So it's like you play Rey, you put a Vibro Knife on her turn 1, and they're like, all right, cool, I'm going to kill Rey. It's Rey Obi, I'll kill Rey. And you're like, okay, cool. And then you put like a 4-speed on her, and now they're really committed, right? They've sunk 5 into her. And you're like, okay, I'll claim and move the Vibro Knife to Obi-Wan. Like, wait, what? What just happened? Now you play a Makashi on Obi-Wan as well, and the dude is a wrecking ball? Now I'm going to kill Rey and get 0 value? What? What just happened? This doesn't seem right.
It's almost like you use it to Guardian Rey for Obi-Wan at that point. Like, essentially, she's just soaking up damage for him. I mean, I've gotten the same thing with the deck where, you put that first 4-speed and Vibro Knife down, and they start hitting her, and then you change it to a DL44, and then you move it to Maz, and then Maz can just roll in and immediately shoot. And it's like, oh, you want to hit Rey with just her 4-speed over there? Yeah, good luck. The only downside is you have to watch out on the counterplay, because they get her down to 1, and then they suddenly claim on you, and now all of a sudden that Vibro Knife with no, unless you have a redeploy or one with the Force, doesn't have a lot of value. So it's that interesting, that really fun back and forth of it. Well, if they claim, they can move that non-redeploy back right to who they're about to kill at the beginning of the next turn, and they're going first now, so you have to be really careful.
But my theory with that is people don't claim faster than Rey if Rey wants to claim.
That's a good point.
It's really the bottom line. And so I like Cargo Hold best in like a snap deck where they have a really hard time claiming because of the resource denial aspect. They have to pay one for it, or a Rey deck where you're guaranteed to go first. And I mean, I claimed like every single turn with the deck. It worked out really well.
Yeah, I think it's one of those abilities where it's just so, and again, like against a Rainbow Fun Card deck, you're right. There's not really a good target to move a weapon to. Maybe if it's a non-redeploy weapon and there's someone you might be able to kill, you might be able to drop it on the Night Sister and kill her before. Like that might be an okay spot, but moving a redeploy weapon, unless you're like removing that die from the pool, which is super useful. It's not great. But there's so many decks where, like there's that like Stormtrooper who, is going to die with the gun you just give him. And it's, and like that play is really, really strong at times, or sometimes if they've loaded someone up really well and you can move, because it'll cause them to discard an upgrade too. And so if they load someone up and you move stuff to load one character up, and then you just are destroying any new upgrades they put out by moving them over, that's a really, really awesome and powerful too. So it's just lots of different opportunities with it.
Yeah, I like the card a lot. I guess the point for me is that it's lower impact than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be crazy high impact, and I was thinking of trying it in like every deck. Han Rey, Vader Raider, basically any deck that could go kind of fast and didn't have an obvious battlefield. But the more I've played it, the more I'm like, it's good, but I feel like you really have to have a plan for it. It can't just be, this is a cool high-skill battlefield, I'm throwing in everything.
It's a super control-y battlefield in that I'm going to control your options, and if the rest of your deck synergizes with that, and that I'm controlling your resources, I'm controlling what you're doing, and I'm also controlling where your upgrades are, I think that's extremely, extremely powerful. But like you said, if you're just like pure aggro, or you're like a Han Rey deck that wants to cycle its holdout blasters, you may be able to get a lot more value out of something else.
Yep. All right, let's move on for a moment. I do want to thank some Patreon supporters. Thank you so much to oh man, come on. Just as I went to do it, I clicked a button and lost it, but I got it back. Don't worry. Don't panic, man. I want to thank Ryan, Jeremy, Jonathan, Jacob, and Sebastian this week. Thanks so much for contributing. Contributing anything, $1 is amazing. I can't believe you would contribute your hard-earned cash to what I'm doing. Really appreciate it. So, James, I want to ask you this question. Empire at War is coming.
Yep.
I want you to tell me one card you want to see in it and what it looks like.
Oh, that's
and I'll go first if you want, because I just
you go
sprung
first
this on James.
you
This
just
is not
sprung
in
it
the
up.
show notes.
Right. You go first.
All
but
right.
I have a few ideas, but go first.
I want to see, and his name should be Yoda, and then under it, Badass. And I want him to be Palpatine. I want him to be 28 cost, leaving room for, an X-Wing style start of the game upgrade kind of thing. 28 cost. It's just amazing. Like, I don't know quite what it would be to be 28 cost, but like, does a bunch of damage, has mill sides, has resource sides, and then has some amazing ability. Like, every time you roll him, remove one of your opponent's dice.
Oh, interesting. I always wonder if you'd have like a lot of like free shields or something, or free health. Like he always heals. Like he either like every time he activates he heals, or or you can generate shields or something like that. Maybe heal
how
2
about
or generate 3 shields.
When you resolve a die, instead of doing 2 damage, heal 2.
Just make him super impossible to kill. Yeah. I love the idea that he's like really impossible to kill and sort of the counter to the Emperor in that way.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of him having like some ridiculous like 3 discard or like super discard side, and a couple, like maybe one really strong melee side, a really strong discard side, a really strong resource side, a really strong shield side, something like that. I don't know. Like give him a little bit different flavor than the Emperor, but still that sort of mega boss feel.
All right, I'm going to throw one more thing out. I know this is totally cheating. It's your turn, but I'm going to steal it. We both played Star Wars CCG. I think this was a little less prevalent when you played, but there were characters that said things like, when you play this, search your deck for the matching upgrade or the matching ship for a pilot. I would love to see that on a character, like a kind of expensive one. It'd probably have to be like 16, 19, 15, 19, somewhere in there, who's a pretty good character, not amazing. Anyone, I don't know, throw out a name. I would have said Mace, but we already saw Mace. So we'll say Kanan Jarrus. And then you get to go into your deck and pull out a 3-cost upgrade and start the game with that upgrade. I think that would be a really cool tool. It'd be hard to balance. The character would have to be way overcosted. Like, the dice on the person would have to just suck to be able to do this. But I think it would be cool to be able to do that. Like, it whittles your deck. It sets you up. Now you have like a 3-dice starting character, and you can kind of build around having that extra card. I think that would be a really neat mechanic.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot, especially because, it's sort of like, again, if you could make him around like 23 elite, so you could maybe run Ezra with him or something for the thematic. And then the thing is, you got to balance, okay, you got 3 resources for free, and it's in play already. But, like you said, if you make the rest of them kind of weak enough, and then I really like the flexibility of it, because then it's like, not just, I guess you could make it like start this character with Force Throw or something, but it'd be a lot more fun if it was start with any 3-cost upgrade. Yeah. And then, then it's, it opens all these new builds where it's just people are playing it. Oh, that upgrade. I didn't even think of that one. And, that person playing with Makashi training and giving up one of those resources just because they want to focus or lightsaber or whatever it is. But that'd be really, really cool. I really want to see outside. We know Ahsoka's probably in the set based on kind of some leaked images of the box. So I hope she's in there. And I kind of want to see her straddling the fence a little bit. I'd love to see it sort of the neutral. Shouldn't be a neutral character, but I'd love to see her maybe be able to use maybe like a dark side ability or something would be cool. Since she's sort of the neutral Jedi and maybe she's walking the path in the middle. But I also really want to see Captain Rex. I think he would be a really fun just a good red card, maybe that pairs really well with like an Ahsoka, and find a really good way to create like a good blue-red deck. What that ability would be, maybe it's just that ability to like pull a kind of like a built-in rearm or something where he can pull maybe it's a little too IG-88, but something where he could pull a weapon easily and get a weapon on him from the discard pile really fast and kind of give you this like beefy red character for heroes that can pull a lot of guns out really quick.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you're talking about a unique red guy, you also got leadership in the picture, which makes things a lot of fun.
Yep, and I ran leadership in that EMAS deck for a little while, like where you could, leadership snap and then suddenly be re-rolling Maz with a bowcaster, which is a lot of time, like later in the game, a lot of times you kind of are not even really rolling snap, you're just trying to hit the 4 damage right off 4/3 damage, and that was always like a sneaky thing if they tried to outrace you and claim, and like, oh, well, Maz is coming back for another turn. It's like, oh, dude. So leadership is a card that feels like it's not played enough for how useful it can be.
I feel like it's because we're missing that combo. Like, we're missing the character combination that can really exploit it. But I agree. Every single time there's a new set, all 2 of them. Every one, James. I always look at leadership first. It's like the very first thing I look at is like, all right, let me see the red guys. Unique.
Who can I use? How cheap is he? How cheap is he to let me ready my awesome blue or yellow character?
Oh, I want my elite Luke standing back up. Oh, no, never mind. It's not good enough. Darn.
Nope.
Next set, I'll be looking again.
K2SO, man. Come on. Leadership.
Oh, K2SO seems so bad, man.
Oh, I know. It's like I'm hopeful there's another card that like lets you move something or like makes his ability more useful because it's kind of like I don't see how you could play him right now. That said, there's so many Empire at War cards. You think about the fact that like probably a little over from a month, maybe a month and a half from now, we're going to be drowning in another set, and it's just going to expand so many options and so many decks. That's really, really exciting.
I got to admit, this is going to sound really weird. I like when the game is a little more established better than when a new set drops. I feel like a new set is so fun for like more casual players and players that just really love deck building. I just like playing good decks. Like, that's what makes me have fun, playing good decks against a good player with another good deck. And I just feel like every time a set drops, I'm like, okay, all right. No, I don't even want to play for a couple of weeks. I need to go through all this and figure it out. And it's fun, but it's tough like when store championship season is right then and you're like, what? I have to actually have a good deck now?
Yeah, I think the timing was rough on this set for people for sure. I think the reason I'm so excited for Empire at War is I feel like this set filled a lot of holes, and I think Empire at War is going to fill even more. So I'm just kind of more excited to have these kind of broad, like each color and each faction just having more options available, because I think the decks we're going to start to get as we have really a full, really, they've said that these 3 sets were all designed together and sort of formed the first block of cards they made. And so I'm really excited to see what this game looks like when all of that is finally there and not broken up into 3 pieces. And so I think that's what I'm most excited about, even though, like you said, it's sort of the Wild West right at the beginning. It gets a little random. You have no idea what you're going to see. People play crazy stuff, and it's kind of hard to know like where things are going to fall. So I will say I'm looking forward to the next like 6 weeks of people really dialing into SOR, because there was decks and Awakenings that, you know, didn't really come out till 3 months, 4 months into that meta. So I still think there's stuff that people haven't found yet. And, you know, I know there's people working on it. There's probably a lot of people working on it for Gen Con and for Nationals at Nova. So I'm really excited to see what people come up with. And while the new set's exciting, there's still, I think, a lot of innovation to be had. And I can't wait to see kind of what people are brainstorming up, whether it's here in LA or in Minnesota or out in Virginia. I think there's going to be some cool stuff.
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, I'm a little terrified about Gen Con. Like, I feel like I have a great handle on the meta. I've got a couple decks I really like. I'm looking for better decks, but I've got stuff that if Gen Con was tomorrow, I'd be real comfortable. But with this new FAQ, I'm a little terrified, man. I'm going to get to Gen Con, and a couple people are going to have just amazing decks that I hadn't even thought about. And be like, oh, God. Oh, no. I'm done before I even began.
Well, you know, if you're not first, Tiny.
I know. When you have the illness that I have, it's really bad, man. Like, so I talked about on Wednesday, I only went 2-2. One of them I definitely should have won, and the other one, whatever. But I won a store championship 3 days before that, and that's gone. Like, that might as well not have even happened after going 2-2. I was like, God, what a terrible night of destiny. Like,
well, you know, you just some nights you just kind of suck, Tiny. It's okay. Everyone has a sucky night once in a while. You still have won 2 out of 3, and you were in the final of the other, and we won't talk about what city beat you.
No, I think it was New York.
Yeah, it was New York.
Yeah,
that guy flew a long way to play in that store championship.
He drove. The dude drove, too. It was a real commitment.
He earned it, really, with that drive across the country.
All right. Well, James, thanks so much for coming on. Is there anywhere people can find you on the internet?
Yeah, so I hang out in the Knights of Ren Discord a lot, as yourself does. I'm just Jay Stevenson there. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I occasionally tweet about Destiny stuff, but I tweet about all sorts of things, video games and stuff. I'm at James Stevenson, just my name spelled out, and that's the easiest place. And then, you know, I'm always doing stuff with Insomniac Games, so it's a great place to work, and I love working in video games, and I love having a chance to play this game and talk about it with you, so thanks for having me on.
Nice. Thank you so much for coming, man. I still don't believe you actually exist, but I mean, I'm ready to be proven wrong.
One of these, maybe next week. You never know.
No, I won't be anywhere for the next several weeks, actually.
Are you going on vacation?
It's so fun. Like, my daughter has soccer camp, so I will be busy being the chauffeur for soccer camps. I can't do like Wednesday nights, and then the next week, yeah, there'll be some vacation and then some stuff, and then Gen Con. It feels like Gen Con is next week with all of the commitments I have. That's why I'm feeling a little bit of worry. I'm like, do I actually have time to prep for Gen Con? I really don't, actually. Like,
are you locked in yet, or are you still...
No, I'm not locked in. I feel like I should be, but that FAQ, it just has me thinking too much. Like, is there a cargo hold deck? If Poe really is gone, does that mean there's a 4-character deck that's going to wreck me? Is Poe really gone? Or is he stronger than ever because people think he's gone? So it's like I have all these thoughts crowding my brain and making it difficult to lock into a deck.
It is unfortunate that X Wars happened with the current. It would have been great if we had X Wars to gauge things, but like X Wars basically is pre-errata, so there's like essentially Gen Con is the first time these post-errata decks are going to show up. Yeah. So you're right, it's kind of this big thing. But you know, find a day or two in there to just really prep like crazy, and you know, all of us LA guys are going to help out as much as we can. So
yeah, and Mike's going to Gen Con as well, so we'll be getting together and hammering that out as well. So I hope they'll be fine. It's just I can be a bit of a worrier when I don't feel super confident, and I want to go into Gen Con feeling like I'm ready. Like, things might happen, right? It's Destiny, man. Just because you're ready doesn't mean you do well. But I want to feel good, like I've got a great hold on the meta and I am ready to crush.
Tiny, you've got this. You got this.
All right. Well, where can you find me on the internet? Well, thanks for asking, everybody.
Oh.
You can find me on YouTube at some crazy random symbols. Just search for Tiny Grimes on YouTube. Tiny Grimes Games on Twitter, Patreon Tiny Grimes, and Facebook. You can see me there. So thanks again, James, for coming by. I'll see you next week in the Smuggler's Den.